Let everything come back to normal again for me. Okay, so how we're going to structure the course today. I want to be very clear about one thing, I suppose. I'm by no means an expert on the topic of global citizenship, and I'm not pretending to be. It's a very vast topic with many different aspects to it. Some of you will be far more knowledgeable certainly about certain aspects of it than I am, perhaps because of your degree subject or because maybe of particular interests that you have. So, this session today is not about telling you everything that you need to know about global citizenship topics. It's about getting you to think about some of the topics and how they might affect the companies that you might be looking at, the ones that you might be looking at working for. It's about looking at how you can relate the activities that you already do to global citizenship. And of course, it's important to understand that you might never hear the words global citizenship at an interview, but it's how it's interpreted. Okay. So you may be asked about commercial aspects of the business, for example, new markets, um, ethical aspects of the business, how we treat our workers, corporate responsibility, what we do for the community or for the environment, or diversity, who do we hire, how do we represent ourselves. So, as I say, it is a huge subject. So, I'm going to start by asking you a few questions. Now, as I ask the questions, I'd be very happy for you to put some of your thoughts into the chat, but you can also take them as rhetorical questions as well. So, what sort of company do you want to work for? Have you really thought about that? Not just the type of job that you want to do, but the type of company that you want to work for. Because it's really important to know what you want to do and what you don't want to do as well. So, as you move from education into your career, what is it that's important to you? What personal values do you have that would encourage you to seek to work for a particular organisation? And likewise, who will you not apply to? What would be the things that would stop you applying to a particular organisation? For example, I know someone who would have nothing to do with tobacco companies, for example, which, other people mightn't have a problem with at all. For you, it might be issues around sustainability, around their integrity or lack of integrity, perhaps around their lack of diversity, or it might be that they don't pay or treat their workforce properly. So, research shows that young people want to work for employers who are committed to values and ethics and for companies that make a positive impact. And that sort of is coming across more and more. It's noticeable at the graduate fairs that companies who want to attract the best talent promote their corporate social responsibility. It's like, consider us. We do good things, not just for ourselves and for our employees, but for the local and the wider community as well. So if global issues are important to graduates, then they will also be important to companies and vice versa. So it's a cyclical thing. Your choices will have an impact on what companies do. So consider what your values are. Consider the types of company that you would like to work for and why. And then, when you're applying to a company, make sure that you research what is important to that company too. What will they want from their employees? And how can you represent that to them? So it's important that you have examples of how you fit in with those values and be able to talk about it. And this will show your commitment, your motivation, and your fit with the company. So I did ask if anybody had any comments that they might like to make there. If any thoughts on who you might like to work for, who you wouldn't like to work for. Still happy to take that into the chat if you want to add in anything there. So again, you're unlikely to use the term global citizen at interview, but rather to demonstrate the ethos of it. So I want to take a small step back and consider what we mean when we talk about global citizenship. What is a global citizen? Is it someone who has lived in a lot of countries? Someone with lots of stamps in their passport, although of course they don't tend to do stamps in your passport these days at all. That's an old thing. Um, Rather than look at a definition, I thought I would give you some points instead. So, a global citizen has an understanding of the world and their place in it. They recognize that they have responsibilities towards humanity as a whole. They are aware of how important it is to know about global issues, and so they make a point of keeping up to date with important developments that might be following the news, researching issues, following the social media of relevant organizations, for example. They inform themselves about other cultures, and importantly, they respect and have an openness to the politics and cultures of others. And it's important to remember that global citizenship can start locally. So it's not necessarily about something at the other side of the world. Sometimes the issues that are global are also local as well. So making a difference in your local community is equally important. And so remember that at interview that, if anything does come up about a global sort of thing, it may be something that you do locally that can also have an impact there too. So an active role in your local community can also have a global impact, or it can be a local group maybe doing something for a global effort. And, we do see lots of examples of that happening. They might hold government to account by doing things like taking part in debates, asking questions, signing or organising petitions, organising movements, things like that. A good example of that would be the Fridays for Future or Youth Strike for Climate. Seems almost like a long time ago whenever that all started. And a global citizen takes action to make the world a better place in terms of equality, in terms of fairness and sustainability. So quite a few things there to think about. It covers quite a range of things in terms of being a global citizen. So we're always hearing that the world is a really small place. And I think with travel and with technology, it's becoming seemingly smaller and smaller, especially as the technology, expands and we can do lots of things that we couldn't do before. One of the ways that countries make links with others is when a town or a city becomes twinned with another. So I thought that it would be interesting to see where Belfast is twinned with. And it turns out we have two what are called sister cities in the USA, and those are Nashville and Boston. And in China, we are twinned with Hefei, I'm sure I'm pronouncing it wrong, and Shenyang. So apologies if I'm getting that pronunciation completely wrong. But these partnerships focus on social projects, education, musical and cultural exchange. You'd imagine that one with the Nashville thing especially. And they're used to foster economic investment, trade and tourism. And I think that it's important to see that the global connections are not just with companies or individuals, but also at a town and a city level, and indeed country level. And if you think about the recent situation in Europe, and I'm not going to start to discuss that in any detail, but look at how sanctions on one country has a huge impact on the global economy and on the whole global production and distribution system. So you can see how everything's so linked together and linked up. Now, I don't know where you are all, where you're all sitting at listening to this today, but as I'm sitting in Belfast, and when I was designing today's session, I thought I would look at an example of a local company to look at how you might consider global aspects if you're applying to a company. And as I happened to be drinking a cup of tea at the time, I thought of this Belfast company. So this isn't an advertisement, by the way, but Thompson's Family Teas, makers of Punjana tea. When you think about tea, you don't really think Belfast. It's not a natural association for us. So clearly there was going to be an international aspect to the company. So let's have a little look at that. So I went onto their website and immediately I see that they get their teas from North India and Kenya. So what are all the issues that are going to be involved in bringing tea from two different countries to Belfast? And on the same page, we see them talking about how quality is important to them and not something that they will compromise on. And therefore, that is reflected in a higher price. So, obviously, if you're in business, quality and price are two of the things that you really have to think about. So, again, what sort of things would you be thinking around here if you were going to be applying for a job in a company like this? And if we go further into the website, we find information on the company's ethical trading ethos. They talk about partner, customer, and client relationships. And if you look at the words on the page, you can see, high standards, great teas, trust, share our ideals, respect, offering equal opportunity. So, folks, as I said, I'm not running this as an advertisement for Thompson's Family Teas. I have no connection with them whatsoever. I'm just giving you an example of how you might start to look at the global aspects of a company, how those things are represented in the company, how you might want to link those things into your interviews. What's important to you? What's important to the company? And how do you represent yourself so that you can link those things together? So something to consider whenever you're, doing preparation for your interviews. For the most part, a business needs to ensure that they can survive, and in order to do well, they often will want to expand. And that often means expanding globally. Now, that could mean having a presence in different locations across the globe and employing people in different locations. It might mean that you employ people in different locations, but not having offices globally. It might mean selling products online and just having one base. Or it might be selling from lots of locations, so there's lots of different variations on how to be a global company. Many ways to expand globally, and companies will do it in many different ways, looking at whatever actually suits their systems and things. But expanding globally means dealing with all sorts of new issues that are likely to be time consuming, complicated, possibly costly, involving new legislation in different countries, definitely navigating different laws and different cultures. Now, if a company is going to expand globally, they will need employees who have what's known as a global mindset. They will look at different business opportunities and think worldwide rather than local. And having employees with a global mindset could be the difference between a company saying, I think that India could be a huge market for us. Let's brainstorm how we could make that the most of that. Or I think that India could be a big marketplace for us, but I wouldn't know where to begin. And there would be all sorts of problems to deal with. Let's put that one on hold. And you can see the difference there between, having someone who thinks, yeah, let's do this, let's find out what we need, and let's be able to work around things. So different cultures have different styles, different likes, and different ways of doing things. So if your knowledge means that you're able to recognize that your product might not sit well in another country, but maybe with a few small tweaks, it could fit in perfectly. So sometimes adapting what you do is all it might take for it to be a global success. But you do need to have that global mindset to see how that can happen. So consider developing your knowledge about cultures and global markets, and develop diverse social networks as well. And where better to do that than at university, with the range of international students that there are, international staff, and the access to clubs and societies that you have available to you. A wee bit more about that later on. So here's something many of you will know lots about. Another reason, or indeed 17 reasons, why we need to be talking about global citizenship. So most of you will be aware of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And as I've already said, sustainability and corporate responsibility is something that all organisations, but especially big organisations, have to not just buy into, but also demonstrate their commitment to them. So there's 17 goals: no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation and infrastructure, reduced inequalities, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, climate action, life below water, life on land, peace, justice and strong institutions, and the final one there, partnerships for the goals. Now, 17 of them, a huge variety of things, certainly, something that affects all nations basically, and some of them will affect some more than others. And again, think about how some of those affect local situations, but also how you can do some things to support some of those goals locally as well. And some of you may well already be doing some of those. So a little bit, I'm not going to go into each one of these, but a little bit more on some of them. So the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals aims to take action on the most pressing global issues humanity faces today. So including peace and security, climate change, sustainable development, human rights, disarmament, terrorism, humanitarian and health emergencies, gender equality, governance and food production. And they're divided into 5 main categories. So you've got for people, they aim to end poverty and hunger and ensure that all people can fulfill their full potential with dignity, equality, and in a healthy environment. And for the planet, the goals are to protect the planet from more environmental damage by sustainably managing resources and taking urgent action on climate change. For prosperity then, to ensure that everyone can enjoy prosperous and fulfilling lives, but prospering in a way that economic, social and technological progress happens in harmony with the natural world and doesn't cause further damage. For peace, the goal is to promote and ensure peaceful, just and inclusive societies where people can live free from fear and violence. And the final one there, partnership, is about enabling all this through a commitment to the Global Partnership for Sustainable Development. So again, a lot of detail on those last 2 slides there. And I will be putting the slides into the chat. All of that information is freely available on their website, but maybe having the PDF of these slides will be quite useful for you to have it in that one place anyway. So if you were moving from one company to another for another job, you would probably be able to talk about your experience within the company and what they did around those goals. So, if I was moving from one job to another, I'd be able to talk about my previous role. So I think that if we look at Queen's as the organisation that you're currently with, it's useful to look at what your current company, Queen's, is doing around sustainability. And sustainability is something that is coming up more and more often across every level in Queen's, and it will inform all of the policies going forward. So here you can see their commitment to the goals across teaching, research, and also across operations at Queen's. So things like travel, buildings, and hospitality. So goal number 5 on gender equality, and you can see that Queen's has won a number of awards across the university on gender equality. It's important to note that all of these things involve action from staff. So policies put in place and work done to make sure that these policies are carried through. So each of these goals require action and contribution from everyone. So it's not enough for a company just to say something, this is in our policy here. They actually have to show the commitment from the staff and how it actually infiltrates to each level of the company. Goal number 6 then is clean water and sanitation. And this is action around using water responsibly, reducing wastage and water quality. And obviously with a, quite a big organisation such as Queen's, that's an important thing to do. We have a lot of buildings. Goal number 11 on sustainable cities and communities. Again, it notes awards, commitments and standards to meet. And once again, none of this happens or gets done without people taking action. And I'm repeating that because it's really important to remember, how important your opinion is and your actions are in making these things happen. So the United Nations says that for the goals to be reached, everyone needs to do their part. Governments, the private sector, civil society, and people like you. So I wanted to look at opportunities in Queen's for you to be able to get involved in that you could link to some of these goals. It may be things that you're already doing, or maybe some of your friends are doing and you know about them, but not necessarily. Or you might be doing them and you mightn't necessarily have made the links to these things. And remember, I'm doing this with a view to you being able to use this information at interview. That's what these employability skills sessions are all about. And that's why I'm not going through all the goals and details in detail. I'm just trying to make those links for you to be able to talk about. So let's start with Volunteer SU. So most of you will be familiar with Volunteer SU, where students volunteer to do a range of things both locally and globally. Many of you are probably involved in some of those activities, and I wanted to link some of them to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals so that you might see how you could talk about these sort of things in a global impact way and not just in a local setting. So if you're involved or have been involved with activities, clubs and Queens where you see a relationship with global citizenship, again, very happy if you'd pop it into the chat, maybe a few words about it. It'll be nice for other students to get that connection as well. So you're very welcome to do that. The pandemic has shown us how the world has to work together on solutions to problems, and that how we behave locally impacts globally. And Volunteer SU have had some remote volunteering opportunities with companies such as Amnesty International, United Nations Volunteers, Solidarity, Shout, RNIB, Diabetes UK and others as well. And just looking at linking the goals of zero hunger and good health and well-being to the volunteering that students have been doing. So things like South Belfast Food Bank, Macmillan, Childline, Parkinson's UK, etc. So, quite a few things there to be able to link to those two standards. And then linking the goals of quality education, reduced inequalities and partnerships for the goals with volunteering such as homework clubs to help kids build confidence and improve their educational attainment and raise aspirations for higher education. And then my final Volunteer SU slide links the Handy Helpers programme with the goals of Life on Land and partnerships for the goals. And this programme helps student volunteers work in partnership with residents associations to address issues in the local community. And they transform areas of deprivation, such as alleyways, into beautiful spaces by doing things such as cleaning, painting, planting wildflowers. So those are some of the links to the volunteering opportunities. As I said, maybe some of you do them, maybe you do other things as well that I'm not aware of. Very happy to have you put those into the chat. And now I want to make some links to some of the clubs and societies that are there. And there are many of them, many clubs and societies. So I'm only going to mention this small selection where there were clear and obvious links. But if you're in a society, then look at what you do and at the 17 goals and see where you might be able to find links as well. So number 1 there, no poverty, Engineers Without Borders, Project Zambia. Good Health and Wellbeing, SWAT, I think that's the medical students, and Friends of MSF. Students for Global Health. And then 14 and 15, Life Below Water, Life on Land, Marine Biology and Zoology Society. 4, Quality Education, the Integrated Society. Gender Equality, and we've got the Feminist and Equality Society, Women in Medicine Society. So again, a few clubs and societies there, and I think I've some more. Yeah, so with number 8, Decent Work and Economic Growth, the Enactus Society. Reduced Inequalities, Inclusion Society, the LGBTQIA+ Society, Sign Language Society, Sustainable Cities and Communities Planning Society, Climate Action, Green at Queen Society, Peace, Justice and Strong Institutions, and we've got Students Together with Asylum Seekers and Refugees, Lawyers Without Borders and Amnesty Society. So, and that's a small amount of the societies, the clubs and societies that are available to you at Queen's. So if you're involved in any of those, do be thinking about how you can use that at interview as well. Of course, you're joining up to help others, but you may as well be able to talk about it as well. And then our own Global Opportunities team offer a range of activities that would certainly help you talk about global issues and your global knowledge. And obviously, visiting other countries, learning more about the culture and learning the language is a huge benefit. So a few things here from the Global Opportunities team. You'll find information on these activities on our careers events page and on My Future, so don't miss out on them. If you have missed this year, they may be available to you next year. If you're not a final year, they may also come up next year. And some of the things that have already passed this year, I haven't put everything up there. The Global Opportunities team have lots and lots of things going on. So check out their website and, see what's available to you. So we've got Working Globally from Northern Ireland, summer internships with an international theme. And you can see there that if you look on My Future and search WGNI, you'll be able to find that. Focus on summer information session and how you register there on the careers events page. Rian Immigrant Centre and USA Placements and J1 Visa Sponsors information session. Again, register for that on the careers event webpage. Project Children, now that one has to be confirmed for 2022, but again, check out the Global Opportunities website. And Huawei Seeds for the Future 2022 virtual program. Again, look that one up on My Future for details. So again, lots of things there from the Global Opportunities team. So I already mentioned to you the Estates team in Queen's and the Green at Queen Society. And Estates also run an environmental leadership program, which again is worth looking into. And it's for students from all disciplines, not just environmental science students. So worth having a look at that. I think it's sort of an ongoing thing, so I've no date there or anything for it. It's probably as people sign up to it, but worth investigating. So you might not be involved in a club or a society, but you can still be involved in raising awareness of the sustainable development goals that you feel passionate about. And it might be following and retweeting relevant messages or writing letters, things like that. Okay, it doesn't necessarily have to be that you're involved in a club or society. And of course, it's also important to note that it is not just what you do, that is important, but also what you don't do. So if you're not formally involved in anything, you can also be doing your bit by things like recycling and reducing waste and stuff. And you can talk about what you do as an individual without being a member of a group. Just think about, what it is that you want to say about it. So it's not enough to say, oh, yes, I recycle, but, how do you want to integrate that into you as a global citizen, or you in your quest to do better for humanity or anything? So that's really what I wanted to say about the global citizenship aspect of things. I want to move on now to the sort of questions that you might be asked around it. And, as I said, you're not likely to hear the words global citizenship at your interview. It'll be something different. But before we move on to the questions, I always like to do the interview preparation around the STAR technique for answering your questions effectively. So basically, you want to be able to tell the interviewer your story by putting your answer into context for them. So remember that chances are they've been, possibly interviewing 20 people over the course of that day or the day before. They're asking the same questions to everybody. They're getting very similar answers back. By the end of the day, it's hard to distinguish one person from the other. So you want to be very clear and concise about what you're telling your interviewer. So do the preparation, as much preparation as you can beforehand. Of course, you're always going to get asked a question that you haven't prepared for. But you know what? If you've prepared 8 out of the 9 questions, then you're doing pretty well. So when you're formulating an answer to your interview, try and follow the STAR technique. It makes your answers clear and logical, and it means that you're getting across the main points that you need to, that you're not going off on a different track. So start by listening to the question. Think of the example that you're going to use, one hopefully that you'll have prepared. But even if you're thinking on your feet, frame your answer into situation, task, action, and result. Describe the event or the situation that you were in. Explain the task that you had to complete. What were the challenges? Describe the specific actions that you personally took to complete the task. And, you can say what you did as a team. Sometimes it's very hard to answer questions without saying, we as a team. But you should also say what you personally did. And finish with the results. What was the results of your actions? Were there benefits? Were there savings? What was the impact? So employers want people who can, deal with pressure at work, stay strong in the face of difficult situations, be calm and poised. And, it's more and more what they're asking for. And this sort of global citizenship is one aspect of things, okay, folks? So it's not everything by any means, but depending on the sort of job that you're going for, it might be more important than in other jobs. But as I said, most companies now are looking at things globally. They're certainly looking at things like sustainability. They have to look at diversity, at ethics, at values, all of that kind of thing. So it does come into recruitment a lot. Just before I move on to the questions, I just want to remind you as well about the practice interviews that are available on Shortlist Me. And Carmel can put a link there in for it and a PDF about it. But basically, it's just an opportunity for you to register to do practice interviews online. There's no other people involved in it. You sign up, you've got 3 days to do your interview, and you get some feedback on it. And again, it's just feedback from an online resource as well. So it's not something that you need to be nervous about or anything that you have to get too caught up with, but it's just something there for you to avail of if you want to. So moving into the questions then at the interview end of things. Now, obviously, if you are having an interview with an organisation like Oxfam or other charities or an environmental organisation, then chances are, the level of detail that is required around this sort of subject will be much, much more extensive. But I would expect that you would go into a lot more detail. These questions are more general. with an aim that they will be applicable to most or at least many organizations. And if the company is large with a global presence, or is small but wants to have a global presence, then you need to have done your research and be prepared to answer questions related to that. So things like, what experience do you have in working in a multicultural environment? That could be, within clubs or even within, volunteering situations and stuff like that. What do you understand by the term globalization? And again, try and relate that to the company that you're interviewing for. What do organizations need to consider around sustainability? And again, try and relate that to the company and, put it into a positive way. There's a lot about sustainability that isn't being done right, but, you want to be trying to be upbeat in terms of what can be done. What world issues do you feel passionate about? And obviously that's something that's very much down to you. Have a look at what it says on the company website, that you might be able to link what your passions are to it. I would imagine, I asked you at the beginning of this session, who do you want to work for? Who do you not want to work for? So if you've made that sort of decision, hopefully the companies that you're applying to will have, the same sort of values and all that you have as well. Have you any experience or knowledge of the United Nations SDGs? So if you haven't, then you probably want to know something about those. What do you do on an everyday level that works towards these aims? So again, I said to you, it might be that you're part of a group, a society, an organization. It might be you as an individual, what you maybe do just yourself. What environmental issues are important to you, and how do you address them? So, if you're saying that you want to work in sustainability, then I would imagine that an employer is going to ask, well, what are you doing about that now? What is important to you at this point in your life, and how are you showing that, basically? What challenges might you face working in another country? And obviously there could be some things specific to the actual country themselves, some general things. I would say definitely be positive. Nothing can't be overcome. Perhaps some examples of how you have done something similar, or maybe how you've learned a language or something in order to ease your way in another country, that kind of thing. Have you stood up for a cause you believe in? And I guess how did you do that? How does your own actions at local level impact at a global level? That kind of could be quite a general question, not necessarily your particular actions. It could be just a general question about that. What issues should our company be looking into to tackle climate change? Now, obviously, you're not going to get asked that at every interview. It's about the type of job that you would be going for. What would you do to tackle climate change? What issues might this company have if we were to sell globally? What would be the challenges of opening an office in another country? Provide an example of how you have communicated complex information to a diverse group. So you might have some experience of doing that as part of your course, as part of your clubs or societies or something like that. And you want to be able to talk about giving people maybe information in different sort of formats, being aware of the diversity within the group, and speaking to people, knowing that not everybody has the same background or knowledge and things like that. So just that you've thought things through. So now is a good time for any questions that anyone might have, while I just give you the next slide, which is the upcoming sessions. So you've got today's session there, and I've just got 2 more sessions actually. The next one, learning agility, and then working with customers and clients. And then we move into development weeks, which will have lots of interesting activities happening in that. So do look out for that. But any questions, folks? I'm just going to stop the recording.
We just have one question from Paula, I think, Roisin.
Okay.
Roisin, do you want to unmute your mic and ask it, or type it into the chat function?
I don't think that if she can put a question into the chat, because I have to go back into the functions to unmute.
Okay. Can you type in your message there, Paula? All right. Yeah.
Carmel, anything you want to add?
No, I think everything's you've covered everything there, Roisin, but you did touch on networking, and I think that's really important as well whenever you're talking about global, citizenship, I suppose. If you do get the opportunity to sort of travel or volunteer or work abroad, that it's about building up that that network as well. I know I've been lucky enough in the past to kind of volunteer and travel abroad, and it's definitely helped me whenever I do come to those interviews. And I maybe asked a question about different challenges or different problems that I've overcome, or have been in a stressful situation or making a decision. I've definitely used my examples from that time to demonstrate those particular skills. So I think it's definitely very useful to sort of participate in all those different activities and tasks if you can, through the student union or through the clubs and societies, and then you can always relay those back in interviews.
Yeah, absolutely.
No questions in here yet, Roisin.
Carmel, have you put any feedback thing into the chat or the slide?
Yes, I've put in the copy of the slides and also the feedback form.